Hello and welcome everyone. So this video is the last video for the chapter 1 reading, right? So in the first video I introduced chapter 1 and kind of the basic structure to our approach to economics, kind of built around these four principles. The four core principles were the cost-benefit principle, the opportunity cost principle, marginal principle. Hopefully by this time you've watched the cost-benefit principle video, you've watched the opportunity cost principle, you've watched the marginal cost principle video. And now we'll talk about interdependence principle. So interdependence principle is telling us our best choice depends on your other choices, the choices others make, developments in other markets, and expectations about the future. So when any of these factors change, your best choice might change as well. So that's what we're going to explore with the interdependence principle, right? So your best choice depends on the other choices you make, the choices others make, the developments in other markets, and expectations about the future. And then when these things change, your best choices might change. All right. So the basic idea is that every choice that we make is in this larger context. You know, you make a decision about how many classes to take, and that's going to affect, well, how much time you have to work out, how much time you have for sleeping, how much time you have to go home on the weekend, whatever is the case. Also, that your decision about how many classes to take affects your classmates, right? Are you going to be in class with them? Are you going to take up one seat that somebody else wouldn't be able to use to enroll in the class, and so on and so forth? Is the class going to be an important prerequisite for something in the future? Or is this going to open doors to like a major or minor, or some other career prep, or whatever is the case, right? Okay, so the four types of interdependencies are the dependencies between each of your individual choices, the dependencies between people or businesses in the same market, dependencies between markets, and the dependencies through time. And really, once we get to like demand and supply, what's going to be really important is like dependencies between markets in terms of like goods that are used together, complements, or goods that are used in place of each other, substitutes. But these other dependencies are also kind of crucial as well. So let's go back to the class example. So how do you choose your classes for the semester? Well, your choices might be, your choices are going to influence each other, right? So if you take the econ class, you won't be able to take other classes scheduled at the same time, except for like this semester where we're, unfortunately offering, sort of constrained to offer remotely. But typically, like you take a class, you can't take another class at that same time. So your own choices have interdependence. Others' choices are interdependent, right? So if somebody else takes the last spot in a popular class, you have to take a different class, right? So if there's a long wait list for a class, so good or bad, I guess it's good. My ethics and economic behavior class has room for 40 students, and the wait list is 52 students, right? And so if somebody takes that last spot, and then, or if think of some other class that they might be taking, if somebody drops the class and now there's 39 students, we take the first person off the wait list, all of a sudden, well, this is going to take the last spot in that class. Everybody else behind them on the wait list ends up having to take another class, and this is going to impact other wait lists, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that there's interdependencies between students with scheduling decisions. If you believe the skills you learn in economics have become more valuable, your decision on which class to take depends on outcomes in other markets. Yeah, so absolutely. Like if you think that there's features about the world today, kind of thinking really carefully about how people interact with data, and people think about policy decisions, and these are all things that economics gives us really good insights to. So if you believe that those things are important, well, then your decision on which class to take is dependent on these other markets, because now all of a sudden the things that you can learn in economics become like increasingly valuable for the applications you might have in the future. Your decision to study econ today, it changes the classes that you made the prereq for. It might lead to taking more econ classes if you decide to add a major or minor, or in completely unrelated fields, right? So like you wouldn't necessarily expect this, but students who end up doing like a doctor of pharmacy, if you go on, you want to be a pharmacist, for a lot of programs, econ, principles of micro and principles of macro, is a prerequisite for your application to the Doctor of Pharmacy programs in a lot of cases, right? You wouldn't necessarily have expected that, but indeed, like your decision to study econ today changes, the prerequisite you've met in the future. Okay, so, think about a choice you made today. How is this affected by other choices that you made? I mean, the choices that other people made, and then your future choices, right? You think about this, just kind of take a moment to kind of reflect and think about, indeed, yeah, the interdependence principle is something that's relevant as we're kind of analyzing our own economic behavior. All right, so practice question. You decide that reading the textbook tonight is going to lay the foundation for your later success in your econ class. Which of the 4 types of interdependencies is this? This is the dependency through time, right? It's not the dependency between each of your individual choices, because we're framing this specifically as the future, right? This is laying a foundation for your success later in the class. So there's the future dependency. It's not the dependency between people or businesses in the same market. There might be, just not in the way that this is framed, right? Like if your decision to read the textbook tonight means you're spending less time, doing something else and, working out with a friend or visiting family or, whatever is the case, yeah, other people might be affected. It's just not from, what this is talking about right here. When you're answering questions, when you're answering like the multiple choice questions, you want to focus kind of specifically on what is presented before us. Dependency between markets, not as stated, right? As stated, the best answer here is dependencies through time, right? The fact that what you do tonight will lay the foundation for later success in your econ class. That's dependency through time. All right, so here is our using the 4 core principles in practice 4-step process. So you want to use the marginal principle, you want to use the cost-benefit principle, you want to apply the opportunity cost principle, and you want to use the interdependence principle, right? So MCOI, right? So use the marginal principle by breaking down how many choices into simpler marginal choices. Apply the cost-benefit principle by assessing whether the marginal benefit exceeds the marginal cost. Apply the opportunity cost principle to evaluate all the relevant costs and benefits, ask or what, and use the interdependence principle to identify how changes in other factors might lead you to make a different choice.